Hi, everyone. My name is Matt, and I'm part of the team here at the Meeting Place. I want to thank you for tuning in online. We are continuing our series, Nobody Told Me. Hope you guys enjoy.
Well, hello, and thanks for joining us online here at the Meeting Place. My name's Tony, and I have the privilege of being the pastor here. Hello to all of you that are in the room with us at our weekends on Wednesdays. It's Cinco de Mayo today, so if you're watching on Sunday, we're in the past, and we're celebrating a little bit, having fun here. But I'm glad you're tuning in with us via online, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or on Sunday or at a later date. I think you picked a great message to watch and engage with. We started this series a few weeks ago called Nobody Told Me. And really the premise of the series is let's just talk about some of the stuff that sometimes the church doesn't do a great job at talking about. And oftentimes we learn lessons in life the hard way, right? We learn after we made mistakes. We learn after life got difficult. We learned after. And sometimes we just wish, I wish somebody would have told me. And what better source of wisdom and knowledge and information do we have than the church, right? Than fellow followers of Jesus, and where we can learn from each other, and we can learn specifically from Jesus and those that were also following Jesus from the scriptures. And so we're doing this series. Week 1 was Nobody Told Me That Marriage is Difficult, which is always great because nobody thinks marriage is going to be that difficult. We know it, but we think, that's not going to be us until we've been married, and it gets harder than we thought it was ever going to be. And we realize, wow, this is us, and it's harder than I thought. Nobody told me marriage is difficult. Week 2 was on sex is complicated. Nobody told me sex is so complicated. And perhaps you resonate with, you recognize that. You already realize that, yeah, it's way more complicated than just put the lime in the coconut and shake it all up, right? And so we talked about that. Week 3 was dating is treacherous, and just talking about some of the pitfalls and the things that can really hurt us in dating, and how to maybe take a healthy approach towards dating, because a bunch of you out there are dating or want to be dating, and so we talked about that. Today, we're kind of talking about, if you add all of that up, dating, marriage, sex, and we're talking about parenting, okay? We're talking about how nobody told me that parenting is just impossible. It is. It's so difficult to parent kids these days. I say these days, but it's probably been like that forever. Parenting is difficult. It seems impossible at times. Ashley, my wife, she follows this account on Instagram called Sarcastic Mom. And this lady posts some really hilarious things that I think that you'll get a kick out of, especially if you are a parent. Things like this, where she says, "Sometimes my kids are so cute that it literally hurts my heart just to look at them. Other times they're awake." Another one, my new neighbors moved in across the street and offered to host a play date. For all I know, they might be axe murderers, but for 3 hours of peace and quiet, I'm willing to risk it. Or I like this one. I walked by a kid and a mom standing in front of a pizza place, and I overheard her say, "Screw it, let's have pizza." And I don't want to bore you with the details, but she's now my life coach, okay? So these are great. My wife and I, we have been married 15 years. We have 3 kids. Lila is 10, Tripp is 8, Jules is 5. And I'll tell you what, I used to be an expert in parenting. I knew it all until I had a kid, right? I thought I knew so much, and then I became a parent, and I realized that really nobody has ever told me how impossible parenting is. And so this message really, though, is for everybody. If you're a parent, it's obviously going to apply to you. But the thing is all of us come in contact with kids in different ways. Your aunts and you're an uncle, your cousins, you are around kids. Maybe you're a teacher. Maybe you help in one of our kids' environments here at the Meeting Place, and you just make an experience for them awesome every Sunday. You come in contact with kids, though. We all have some level of influence with kids in our lives. And so this message is really for all of us in the ways that we interact with kids. And I want you to know that while we're going to learn some principles from Scripture, that also, while they're helpful, you don't even have to be a follower of Jesus to really say, this is good news, this is helpful, and you can choose for yourself how much you want to apply to your life, how much you can decide what you want to put into practice and apply for your own life and your own family. Also, I think it's important to say, I realize that talking about parenting can kind of surface some not great memories for some of you. Because the realities of your parenting process has been difficult. Maybe your relationship with your kids is estranged. It's not what you want it to be. You have grown kids out of the house and they want nothing to do with you. Maybe you've lost a child, whether it was a miscarriage or a child that through a tragic accident, you lost a child. And this is a difficult conversation. This is a difficult topic for you. Maybe you've wanted to have kids for so long and you've just never been able to do it. And I just want you to know that, like, we're here alongside of you. There's no intention here to bring up painful memories or to rub your nose in the blessings of others. That at the meeting place, we always want to take the approach I think that Jesus took, which we want to grieve with you who are grieving, and we want to celebrate with you who are celebrating. Parenting is one of the most difficult jobs on the planet. For my wife and I, we're at the spot where our children span from preschool age to older elementary. And at this point, I mean, every week in our house, there's some level of chaos where something's in disarray, someone or something's yelling. There's not a week that goes by where somebody doesn't try to run away from their house. I want you to know that so far I've come back every time, but it can be crazy at times when you're parenting. There's so much dysfunction in homes and with child raising that can make any of us feel frustrated and feel like we're failing at parenting. And here's really what I want you to know at this, is that you are not alone. You're not alone in any of this. And part of the reason that parenting is so difficult is that it always seems like we're playing catch up with our kids. Like we're chasing our kids into the next season and next stage of life. And so we're always playing catch up. Another reason is because every single kid is so different. Like it's incredible how, like my 3 kids come from the same DNA pool, but how different each kid can be, right? Some of you have experienced that, like how did that kid and that kid come from the same parents? Like one kid can come out of the womb with like a rose in their hand saying, wow, the world is wonderful. You know, and another kid comes out with a cigar. The next few years are going to be difficult for all of us. You know, like it's just every kid is so vastly different. And then you have the challenges that change from generation to generation, right? The challenges that my generation face are so much different than the challenges that my kids are facing. There's a whole new set of challenges. And so we feel this pressure to be great parents, but things are shifting and changing. It's like there's a moving target, and we just don't always know what to do. It seems impossible. I love the conversation that Lewis Carroll's book, Alice in Wonderland, that Alice has with the Cheshire cat, where she says to the cat, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go? And the cat says back, that depends on where you want to get to. And Alice says, I don't much care where. And the cat says, well, then it doesn't matter which way you go. And sometimes when we're trying to parent, we literally have no idea where to go, which way to go, what's better, what do this, do that, and what's best for our kids. We don't know what we're trying to accomplish in our parenting, and it can feel just like a moving target, like this daunting task. How do I know if I'm succeeding? How do I know if I'm doing a good job? And so our goal today is not to pack everything into one talk that I know about parenting or I've learned about parenting, but rather to give you some things to shoot for, to aim for, a direction to go in your relationship with your kids or in relationship with the kids that you have influence with. And so really, there's 2 observations I want to share with you about parenting. The first one is this, that your top priority as a parent is to retain influence. As your children get older and older, they grow more and more, the control that you're able to exert over them becomes less and less. And your top priority is not to control your kids, but to retain influence with them. Here's why this is so important, is that the older our kids get, the more critical our influence in their life becomes. And the times in their life where they actually need our influence are the times that they are making decisions that matter the most to their life. Like the kids, they need your influence when they're choosing who and how to date. They need your influence when they're choosing how to go about getting their first job. They need your influence when they're choosing a career path or a college path. They need your influence when they're choosing who to marry. They need your influence when they're dealing with issues of ethics and integrity. They need your influence when they're dealing with decisions on how to handle themselves. They need our influence in these important seasons of life. Now, I can remember my senior year of high school. And some of you know me enough, you've been around for a while, you've heard bits and pieces of my story. And when I was 13 years old, I moved out of my mom's house. It was no longer the best scenario. It was no longer a safe spot to raise a child. And so I ended up moving out with my sister, and we then, through high school, we were raised by my grandparents. And a week before my senior year of high school, my grandpa, who had done an incredible job of teaching me some different things and values and integrity and these, but a week before my senior year of high school, he passed away in a tragic fishing accident on the coast. And as you can imagine, that just disrupted my life. I thought, going into my senior year, I thought I knew my career path, my college path. I thought I knew what I was doing, with the direction I was heading. I just had no idea. I didn't know what to do anymore. And in my life, by the time I was like 11 or 12 years old, my dad had no more influence in my life. I mean, I didn't talk to him in years. And then, my mom, because of the circumstances, like I wasn't around her a lot. But here's the difference between my mom and my dad, is that one day, my senior year, I don't remember, it was the day after school, and I walked in to my mom's office at her work. And we're just talking about what's next. What am I going to do after high school? And I literally broke down because I had no idea who to talk to or what to do or what to even think. I mean, my life was just kind of in shambles. On what am I going to do next? I don't know. And I sit there with my mom, and she hugs me, and she cries with me. And here's what's so incredible when I think back to that moment is my mom relinquished all control in my life when we no longer lived with her, but she never lost influence. She never, the fact that I knew she was a safe person that I could trust and go to and talk to, that she kept her influence in my life, that I could talk to her. And what we must consider as parents is that control is not the same thing as influence. Just having control in your kid's life doesn't mean you have influence in life. You might get them to do what you've asked them to do, but at what cost? How much influence do you lose in the process? Because at the end of the day, what you want with your kids is influence. That's why the Apostle Paul, he writes this verse to the Christians in Ephesus. He writes this, he says, "Parents, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord." It's possible that you can exert control in your kids' lives to the point that they comply with your wishes, but that you lose influence. Right? You might get them to do what you've asked them to do. You might get them to do what you want them to do, but they still just can't wait to move out of your house. It's possible to be right. I mean, after all, you're the parent. You're older. You've got more years under your belt. What are they, 14, 15 years old? How much can they know? They think they know it all, but you're the parent. And so you can be right, because you know all these things that they don't know yet. But sometimes you can be so right that you write them right out the door. And what matters most to us is the influence. It can't be just control. At the end of the day, that's not what you want. And so you have to ask yourself, how much is momentary compliance worth relationally? Is this battle worth it, or is there a better way? Now, in order for us to understand how influence works in the lives of our kids, it's critical that we understand really what stage of life that they are in, what stage of life our kids are in. It's the reason that you will let your 17-year-old drive a car, but you wouldn't let your 6-year-old, because they're in different stages. You don't treat them the same way, right? If you have a 3-year-old and their 3-year-old hits their older sibling, that's one thing, and you treat them a certain way. But if that older sibling, that 12-year-old, hits that 3-year-old back, you treat them differently, right? The goal is to not be the fairest parent of the land. You're going to treat them differently. You can love them the same, but you're going to treat them differently because you want to recognize what stage, what phase of life are they in, and what do they need from you as their parent in that stage. In fact, what I want to do is I want to walk through this together so that we can understand exactly what this looks like. When it comes to parenting, there's kind of 4 stages that we go through. I'm sure there's lots of different ways you could word this and put this, but this is the way we're going to look at it today. And then within here too, we have authority and we have friendship. 2 different things that often as parents that we have when it comes to parenting our children. We have authority over them. We also have friendship with them. And we'll see kind of how that works out all the way through. The first stage is this nurse stage. Because really what it boils down to, when your kid's a newborn, when they're 0, 1, 2, even to 3 years old, all you're really doing for them is just keeping them alive, aren't you? Like you got to feed them, clothe them, house them, but that's the goal, is you want to keep them alive. Because what it kind of comes down to is what goes around comes around. Like you'll wipe their butt, so one day they'll wipe. You see what I'm saying here? So that's what we do. We just take care of them. We keep them alive. And what happens in this stage is we have very little authority. Because they're not listening. They don't get it. You can't say, hey, go brush your teeth. Go do the dishes. Take the trash out. What are they going to do? Okay, I'll get it right on that. No, they don't know any different. Like they don't know how to do those things yet. We also, in this stage, we have very little friendship. I mean, when your kids are like newborn, like how are you supposed to be friends with them? All they're doing is like just eating and pooping, but they get 2 years old, 3 years old, and you can start to develop, like you see their personality, it's fun and it's exciting, but still a friendship is not really there. I know for me, I didn't even really know what to do with my kids until they were old enough to throw a ball and play catch. And that's what's fun. 2 years old, they start talking, they're moving, they're playing, but still your friendship level is really low. And then you get into this king and queen stage, and this stage is where your authority just takes off. You've got to let your kids know that you are the king of the house, that you are the queen. It's a monarchy, and it's important that they know it. Because these little creatures that you've created here are trying to overthrow the throne. And they're trying to take control. And you've got to let them know who's in charge. You let them know what it looks like to be part of this house, to be part of this kingdom. And what happens sometimes is we get so concerned about I want my kid to like me. I don't want my kids to not like me. And so we value friendship. See, friendship has to stay relatively low here still. Sometimes when we exchange the two and we push friendship up in this phase, we say, I value friendship. What happens is we let the most immature people of the kingdom, or people that live in the castle, run the kingdom, right? And that's just not the way it should be. You've got to show, you have authority over your kids in this stage, and that is okay. Now, then we get into this next phase, the coaching phase. And this is an interesting phase here because what happens is your authority actually drops way down. And the king and queen stage, I'll step back for a second. That's when your kid's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to maybe 11, 12 years old, where you have authority over your kids. You can ask them to do things and expect them to do things, and you don't always have to give them a reason why, and they should comply to some level, right? That you have authority over them. But in this coaching phase, what happens is the script is kind of flipped here. Your authority goes way down, and your friendship goes way up. Because think about this. The very, very basics of being a coach is you're not the one in the game. What you're trying to do is you're relinquishing some of your authority because they're actually the one in the game, playing the game they're on the field, and you're on the sideline now, just cheering them on, giving them encouragement, trying to help guide them, instruct them. You're shouting from the sidelines, telling them, you're giving them insight, maybe seeing things that they don't see, but you're playing the role of a coach in their life. And it's important that we relinquish some of that authority because what happens is we start to build this friendship with our kids. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what we want with our kids is we want influence. We want influence with them. And if we always exert our authority over them and we try to control them, what happens is eventually they don't even want to listen. They don't want our input. They don't want our influence. And so in these teenage years, 13 to 15, 16, 17, 18 years of age, before they're out of the house, our roles kind of flip here and we become more of a coach in their life because we allow them to play the game and we're shouting from the sideline trying to help instruct them. And then guess what happens? After the game, so to speak, you can come home and you can watch the game reel and you can talk about it. What'd you learn from that? Here's what I saw. Here's what you saw. Okay. And you can learn from them. In this stage in your life, it's far less important that they just comply to everything that you push on them and that you actually take this posture of saying, hey, I want to listen to you. I want to learn from you. They're 15 years old and they know how the entire world works. And you don't, Mom. You don't, Dad. You're old news, right? You lived in the Stone Ages to them. They don't even understand the world you grew up in. So you feel like you have it all together. So you're like, no, I can see things you can't. And sometimes we just want them to comply. But they're really, what they need from us is that person that's just going to listen and cheer them on and encourage and provide instruction and insight. And maybe see a few things that they don't see, but we play this role as coach. And the reason why this is so important is because when we do this and our friendship goes up, when we advance beyond the house and they move out, they go to college, they get their career, what happens is friendship just stays friendship. And isn't that what we want? Isn't that what we want to be friends with our kids? Like you want to have influence with your kids. For Ashley and I, our goal is that our kids would love to hang out with us, that our kids will want to be around us even when they don't have to. Right? That's the type of relationship that we want with our kids. We want that friendship. And in that season of life, that stage of life, guess what happens to authority? You end up having no more authority. And they're out of the house. They're their own adult. You can't call them and say, you've got to do this and you've got to do that. And come over here. It's Monday. It's garbage night. Take the cans out. You don't have the authority in their life. And so what you get to do is you get to go through life. And when life gets difficult, and they make some choices that maybe you would have made differently, that you would have done differently, you could see the error of their ways, but they did it that way, what happens is they make their own adult decisions, they deal with their own adult consequences, and you get to walk through that with them as a friend. As someone who loves them, cares about them, has their back, is cheering them on, but you get to be their friend in that, not their authority. You don't get to make the decisions anymore. In that stage, you relinquish that authority. When you're in these coaching years, it's kind of like, think of it like when you go and you buy a new piece of furniture. And I don't know if you've ever gone to IKEA, or something, and you see the little thing on the box, some assembly required. When it comes to parenting, that's like a huge understatement. Some assembly required? No, there's a lot. But if you relate it to, like, you pull out these instruction manual, when you're in this coaching phase, like you can see step by step what they should do and what this is the right move, and you can see it every time. But you have to let them do it. An instruction manual doesn't get to decide for me what screw I put into what hole or what board I choose to put where. I can take the instructions and I can choose to just let go of them and not worry about them, or I could take them and I can actually have them help me form my decisions and help me process and help me make the decisions that will get me to the end result that I want. That's what we get to do as a coach. We get to provide that insight and that, but we don't get to just keep the authority. And what happens sometimes is we are in this stage as king, queen, and we're so worried about our kids liking us that we don't choose authority. And then they become teenagers and they start to act out, they start to rebel, and all of a sudden we realize, man, it's now or never. I got to crack down. I got to be the police officer in the house. I got to, and we start to exert our authority over them, and they just can't wait to move out of the house. And so when we do these stages and navigate these stages of parenting and influence with our kids well, what happens is we retain influence with our kids, which again, at the end of the day, that's truly what we want. How much is the value of momentary compliance if we lose influence with our kids? And you can actually lose influence and erode influence by the way that you treat your kids in these coaching years, these king and queen years. As a coach, I coach middle school sports. I'm coaching my son in baseball now. I tell my kids every season, hey, it's not my goal to make you a better athlete, but it's my goal to make you a better young man or young woman, and along the way, you're going to become a better athlete. That's my goal as a coach for these kids, and that's your goal as often as a coach for your children. Right? Here's another thing that I think is important to recognize: the quality of your friendship determines your influence. The quality of your friendship determines your influence. What happens to those of us who are parents, as our kids get older, we can still try to influence them using authority instead of friendship. And the irony is that if we don't make this shift from authority to friendship, we'll actually lose influence altogether. At a certain point in adolescence, your kids become very familiar with your worldview, with your opinions. And again, because they're 13 years old and they know how the world works, they don't want your worldview. They don't want your opinions because they've got it all figured out. And so what's important, again, is that we sit with them and listen in the process to help them process. This way that you retain influence by just being there with them to process. If we're just trying to fix the problems and solve everything for them, that's the way of authority. That's not going to be helpful at the end of the day for your kids. The way that you retain influence is by maintaining good relationship, because the quality of your relationship will always determine the weight of your influence. And so here's the tension, is that early childhood is based on authority, and it's mostly centered around protection, right? You don't want your kids to go play in the street, so you protect them from that, to touch the hot stove. So you stop them from doing that. Sometimes you yell at them, stop, but it's based on authority and protection. But as they grow, parenting must become more based on relationship and more centered around influence. And if you don't make that shift, at some point you start to exasperate your children and provoke them to anger. You're doing exactly what Paul said, hey, this is not what you want to do, right? And ultimately, I don't think that's our desire. We don't want to lose influence with our kids. Now, here's the inevitable question with this, okay? I think this is a big deal, and I'm sure some of you are already asking this. Okay, but don't they still need discipline? Like, don't they still need to know right from wrong? Don't they still need called out? Don't they still need to be held accountable? Don't they still need discipline? We can't just let them do whatever they want. And the answer is obviously yes, they do. They still need it. But the way that you do it is different. Like in your teenage years for your kids, you have the ability to side with your kids against their consequences. Like even if your kids are grown, you have the ability to side with your kids against their consequences. In other words, discipline as your kids get older, it can really be found in this expression of just two simple words. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. What a bummer. You've got to pay that speeding ticket. Ugh, it's the worst. Oh no. You've got to stay late tomorrow after school because you didn't study for the test and you had to retake it. Oh man, what a bummer. Oh no. Oh no. Like you didn't show, like you knew that what the curfew was. We decided on it ahead of time and you got home 30 minutes late. And now you're going to have to go through the consequences of that. Like, oh, man, I hate that. Oh no. You wanted to go to this party, but you knew that we already talked about it. You agreed that you were going to do your chores first, and you decided not to do them, and now you can't go to the party. Oh no, what a bummer. And you get to actually side with your kids. And see what happens then is if as long as the expectations are clear and the consequences are made known ahead of time, here's what can happen is you get to side with your kids and you get to be on their side. You don't, like, I'm not even mad at you. I'm not even punishing you. I'm just holding you accountable to the consequences that you already knew about. Oh no. I'm not, like you can say, I'm just as bummed that you're dealing with this as you are. Like, I get it. That's tough. You got to come up with that money for that speeding ticket. You got to face the consequences. But as a parent, you got to say, hey, I'm for you. And just like you, I'm against the things in this world that want to hurt you and harm you. I want to keep you from those things, but I'm on your side. Any discipline that you bring to your child should ultimately be restorative and not retributive. Okay? It is always rooted in reestablishing broken relationship. This is exactly what God did for us. Jesus on the cross is God reestablishing a broken relationship with us in spite of our sin. And if we can understand that these seasons that are in parenting, the phases of development that our kids are in, then we can begin to parent them in the way that they need, and we can retain influence later down the road. And can I tell you something? Later is longer. In fact, like if you've got a phone, whatever, like write this down somewhere, put a note somewhere. Later is longer. Like your discipline and training and coaching in their life is what, 14, 15, 16 years of their life? But you get to hopefully be in a relationship with them, not for years, but for decades. For 20, 30, 40, even 50 years, you get to be in a relationship. You get to be friends with your kid. Later is longer. They're going to be 18 plus and out of the house for hopefully far longer than they were in it. Now, I want you to know that today's message, this is part one of what we're going to do in two parts. And so next week, we're going to come back to this, and we're going to look at really some nuts and bolts on how to apply some of the things. What do we do, and how do we keep influence with our kids? And so this is just part one of that to kind of whet your appetite for what's ahead. And so here's just the last thought as we wrap up today. Some of us, we hear a talk like this, and we feel like, I've already messed up. Like, what do I do? Like maybe your kids are grown and they're out of the house and you have no influence with them. Maybe your kids are teenagers and you have no influence with them. They don't even like you. Maybe you have a 3-year-old kid and you don't even like them. Okay, but you feel like realistically, like you feel like, man, I haven't done a good job at any of this and I've messed up. Maybe you feel like, man, I wish my parents could have heard a talk like this. Because maybe if they could have been a better parent for me, maybe I'd be a better parent today. Or maybe I'd be a better parent in the future. Maybe you wish things could have been different in your home, so it could have showed you an example of a better way on how to be a better parent. And so what do you do? What do you do with that? I want you to know that it is never too late. It's important that you know this, that it is never too late. I want you to know that a sincere apology can go a long way. I told you a while ago that my dad hasn't really had influence in my life since I was 11, maybe 12 years old. I've seen him just a couple of times in the last 20 years of my life. Now, in my phone, his name is Long Shot. I don't even have his name in there. I just call him Long Shot because I feel like it's always a long shot that we'll ever have a relationship. But every now and then, a holiday, a birthday, I text him. I say hi. I send him a picture of his grandkids that he's never met. And I'm like, what harm can it do? But here's what I'm really thinking is like, I just always want to know. In fact, Dad, if you're watching this for some reason, I want you to know that it's never too late. For any of you parents, it's never too late. There's always a step you can do to take towards reconciliation. It's my biggest fear in life is to fail my kids. And for some of us, that's what we feel like our reality is in. We feel like we're in the thick of it. Like, I just haven't done a good job. Things didn't go the way I planned. And you feel like maybe it's too late to even start, but it's not. But here's the reality is that it's never too late, but, and this is a big but, okay? It's never too late, but you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. You've got to switch things up. You've got to search for and seek out a better way. If you're a yeller, and you exert control by yelling and domineering, you got to find a better way. If you're a threatener and you constantly threaten, you got to find a better way. If you don't spend time with your kids, you got to find a better way. If you have always got to be in control, you've got to find a better way. In fact, think of it like this. Treat your kids or treat the next kid that you come in contact with, that you have influence with, treat these kids the same way that you would hope you would be treated if you were in that same stage of development that they were in. Give them that same grace that you would want to be given to you. Don't just yell at them because they are being some crazy kids on the corner of the street. Don't think about where they're at. What do they need in that moment? Because it's not always friendship, and it's not always authority. What is it that they need in that stage? And find that better way. It's never too late to take a step in the direction of reconciliation. And so wherever you're at, if you're a parent and you're discouraged, I want you to know that you can be encouraged because you have the ability to take a step this week that can determine the direction of how the next part of your relationship with your kids goes. You can't control everyone, but you can control yourself. If you're not a parent, but you have influence in a kid's life, you're a teacher, you're an aunt, you're an uncle, or whatever it is, you've got a neighbor down the street that loves to play in your driveway. You have the ability to bring influence in their life. And I think that if we say, God, what is a step that I could take to show love and compassion to these kids right where they're at, that the way that they need it, the way they need to receive it and understand it, and help us to do that. So I want to pray for us. I want to pray that God would help reveal those steps to us and that we'd be encouraged that we have the ability to take them. As hard as the road may look in front of us, as grim as it may have been for years past, that there's a better way and that there is light in darkness. That's what Jesus does in our life. And I think it's through following Jesus that we get revealed that better way. And you and I have the choice to follow him and follow his ways to help kids in our lives. The kids, your own kids, a neighbor's kids, your nieces, your nephews, whoever it would be. There's a way that we can point them to Jesus by the way that we love and care about them in the stage that they're at. Let's pray together. God, I'm so grateful that we learn so much about you through parenting. And that unconditional love that we often have for our kids, man, that's what you have for us. And God, so for maybe we didn't have great parents on this planet, but God, will we recognize that you are a heavenly Father that loves us dearly, and we can trust you and we can follow in your ways. And that today we choose to take that step to follow in your direction. Would you lead us and guide us as parents, as aunts, as uncles, as friends, as teachers, as people in the community that have influence in the lives of kids? Help to lead our steps so that we can do better, so that we can help kids see Jesus in us, so that kids can be healthier and wholer as little humans that are becoming these adults that have the ability to change the world. So help us to do that. In Jesus' name, amen.